ICQ Podcast episode 449, a simple way to receive QO-100. Well, hello fellow Amateur Radio enthusiasts, and welcome to this, our 449th episode of the ICQ Amateur Radio Podcast, supported in this episode by our monthly and subscription donors. In this episode, we're joined by Martin M1MRB, Chris, Mike Zero, Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin, Mike Zero, Sierra Golf Lima, Bill, Whiskey Charlie 3 Bravo, and Leslie, Golf Zero Charlie India Bravo, to discuss the latest amateur radio news. Myself, Colin M6BRY, rounds up the news in brief, and this episode's feature is a simple way to receive QO-100 by Ed Durant DD5 Lima Papa. Now, it's shows only possible due to the very kind donations received by you, our dear listeners, and the best way to do that is by visiting our webpage at www.icqpodcast.com/donate, where our annual, monthly and annual subscription donors, they've helped us out and paid our way so we can release this show to you advert free, independent, and as I say, a great way for them to show their value for what they get from the show. Now, Valentine's Day is coming up, so we'd ask you to show your love for your ICQ podcast by going, say, to icqpodcast.com/donate and setting up either a subscription donation, which is greatly needed, or, as I say, a one-off donation to show your love for the ICQ podcast. So do consider us this Valentine's Day weekend, coming up next weekend, and as I say, whatever donations you send our way for the value you receive in your show will go towards keeping your show advert-free, independent, and produced for you every fortnight. Right, well now we're going to join Martin, Chris, Martin, Bill and Leslie to discuss and generate thoughts about the latest amateur radio news, including a 70cm mesh network and celebrating World Radio Day. As always, hope you enjoy.
The ICQ Podcast. Come for a moment. Stay for an hour.
Well, hi guys, and welcome to episode 449 of the ICQ Podcast and tonight's news roundtable for this episode. Tonight, I'm joined by Mr. Chris Howard, M0TCH. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Martin. Hi, guys.
Good to have you.
Nice to be here.
Yeah. I'm also joined by Mr. Martin Rothwell, M0SGL. Are you home from work? Was it mine?
Hello. I will unmute my microphone and start talking. Yes, I'm home from work. I've had power issues. In fact, we've had power issues at work. I've had power issues at home. But it's all good. We are here, and hopefully things will stay up for the rest of the record.
Martin,
hello. You're
not supposed to bring work home with you. You know, if you got a power problem at work, leave it at work.
Oh, I wish it was that simple.
Sorry.
Power issues at work than we have at home, so.
Yeah. Moving over to the States, tonight we're joined by Mr. Bill Barnes, WC3B. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Martin. Hey, everybody.
Yeah, good to have you there. And as I say, hopefully it'll be a good one tonight. And he's back by popular demand.
No!
Over there in Essex. Yes. Not no. Yes. We have Mr. Leslie Butterfields, G0CIB. Hi, Leslie.
Good evening, Martin. I've got my mug of tea and something to duck, so I'm something to duck in the tea. So I'm raring to go.
Oh, that sounds good. So as long as you don't do any experiments with tea and dunking whatever you're dunking, that'll be all right. Oh dear. Right. Unfortunately, Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH, can't join us tonight. He's a little bit under the weather, so not very well today, so he won't be with us today. Right, let's start with our first news story, and I kind of like this one. It's very historic, but AMSAT-Switzerland are honouring historic ham satellite QSO, and this goes back to 1965, and I didn't even have a licence then. Well, I wasn't even out of school. And I'm probably the oldest one on the list, so I'm going to pass it to Bill first, but you probably weren't born by then, were you, Bill?
No, I'm the class of 73, so I was years after this. But yeah, AMSAT-Switzerland's using his call sign after he became a silent key, and he was the original a Swiss amateur who had the first QSO with a German amateur. I think it was Oscar 11, but they're using his for a special event and a trophy event. I think it's really nice to have special events around folks that, helped out the hobby and did some historic stuff. So I will be looking for this one as it comes close. I believe it will be in March through 3rd through to 16th. So look out for HB9RG. So that'll be a really neat special event station.
Yeah, certainly will. And, as you say, it's nice to recognise special events and things that have happened in the past. And it helps us understand where this hobby's come from. Chris, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's amazing. 1965, first ever amateur radio QSO through a satellite. So, yeah, I mean, it's great that they're going to be commemorating this with this event. So, no, I think it's really good. This is also the Swiss amateur radio people. So, no, great. And it talks about the guys that were involved, Hans Rudolf Lauber and Alphonse Haring. So it was a QSO from, it looks like, based on the call signs, it was from Switzerland to Germany. So, and it was via this Oscar 11 satellite at the time. So yeah, great. And good that they're, bringing it back to life, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would have been probably 11, 12 when this happened. So, yeah, obviously wouldn't remember, but I know round about that time there was massive excitement when the satellite Telstar was up there and supposedly going to communicate across the Atlantic with television pictures and things like that. And I know everybody got very, very interested in space around this time. So it's nice to generate a bit more interest. Leslie, what's your thoughts?
I think it's great. I've met people like that before. 92, this gentleman passed away at the age of 92. They're sort of pioneers of their time, and that's the best way I can describe it. I was only age 2 at the time, so no chance for me. But I think it's a great idea. Honour these people that have contributed to the hobby, and of course it's more publicity for the hobby, which is all good as well.
Certainly is. Martin, have we left you anything to say on this one?
I was reading this, and it's a trophy event for satellite contacts. That's something different. I don't do very much satellites. I have played with them, but it's certainly something different, like a special event via satellite. People chase special events. Are people going to think, oh, I want to get this one? And is it going to encourage them to try satellites? It says it can be made via low, medium, and high Earth orbit satellites. Wouldn't it be easier to just say any satellite that isn't like the geostationary, like with QO-100, but which I think that's pretty much includes. But either way, it's great. Satellite people, I am sure, will love to have more people to talk to on the air. I know when I popped up on satellites for the first time, I was almost a rarity because they all seemed to know each other, and suddenly everybody wanted to talk to me because I was a new call sign for them. But either way, that's all good. I do wonder, though, they say this launched, the first satellite contact was in, 1965? The curious side of me wonders what kit was in that satellite. Was it running on valves back then? How do they react in space? And how big are the solar panels they'd have needed to run them? I have no idea, but yeah, why not? It's something new and different, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly was, Martin. And I can't tell you whether they were valve or not, but I believe, because people did some work generating newer versions of the original Russian Sputnik, and I believe that had valves in it. The first ones, they just went round the Earth bleeping, and then a few years later we get into this era. And AMSAT were very, very early in the space race, and I suppose it was because you could launch. There was space on the launch craft, so we managed to hitch a ride. Today, where it costs a fortune to put a 10 centimeter cube into space. So, yeah.
Maybe fine. Just hire a terrible gas engineer and wait. Just attach your satellite to the bottom of the boiler. Be fine.
Oh, yes. Well, we're being very naughty there, Martin. So, yeah. But it's an interesting one, and I wish them every success. As Bill said, the event runs in March, from the 3rd to the 16th of March. So, something different for you guys to try. Move to our next news story. And mesh network for 77's project in Canada. Now, as far as I know about this, I'm not big on it. I think I have a loose understanding, but it's moving data around in a linked up system. Bill, would you go first on this one again for me, please?
Yep. I've been following this quite a bit. It's coming out soon. The current iteration of it that's going to be released sometime, if it hasn't been released recently, it'll be sometime this year, is prediction. It's a hat that goes on top of Raspberry Pi Zero, and it's going to be a software-defined radio designed for the UHF band. Here in the States, it's 420 to 450 megahertz. I think over there, it's 430 to 440. Maybe off
something like that.
Yeah, I'm a little fuzzy, but it's an intelligent protocol. So the idea being is this thing's going to be programmed up so that it will learn who it can hear and who can hear it, and build, data pathways at 500K. That's 500 kilobits. And that's why they're looking at the UHF band, to be able to have enough bandwidth to do that. And a lot of interesting stuff's being developed around it. But the article that you sent us was they're actually looking at this in Canada. Some folks up there are going to start, building some stuff and trying digital signals across a data network, basically, that they're going to build from these little SDR boards on Pis. I think it's going to be a real neat project. And I think they're going to have a lot of fun with that and be able to hopefully build some robust links to use when they need to. Stateside here, I've been following the new packet radio folks that came out of France, and I know out on the west coast of the States, there's quite a bit of those networks set up. That's more point to point. There is a point to multi-point mode in it. And the big one that everybody talks about is Ardent. And that's reusing commercial gear on the amateur radio bands to build an IP as an internet protocol data network of very high speed. But that stuff's I think 900, 2.4, 3 gigahertz, and 5 gigahertz. I'm a little fuzzy on that one, because there's none of that around here because of our geography. So that's why I'm kind of interested in this IP400 UHF protocol, because UHF does pretty good around here when you have it on a mountaintop. So I think this may be something that we'll actually see spread around some more and get some higher speed data networks. The trick with packet radio, there's still packet radio running around here on VHF mostly, and it's almost all 1200 baud. I'm aware of a couple links that are set for 9600 baud, but you need a special radio. You can directly tap in the FM discriminator. There's a lot more work to it. But this IP400 project being a software-defined radio, you snap on a Raspberry Pi and load some software. I think there's a lot more possibilities of that, because start to finish, you're not messing around with an existing, FM radio that you're trying to do something different with. This is built from the ground up as a software-defined radio for data. And I believe they're starting to look at this in the Canadian province of Alberta. And I think there's a club out there around about us. I was doing some Google searches earlier. But this is definitely a new thing coming, and I think it'll be something to pay attention to. And they will be using M17 over it for voice. If folks remember that there's a new open source digital codec protocol coming down the road that'll be completely open source, M17, which I have yet to see anyone use around here. It'll be something interesting to see how that works out. So we'll see how it's an announcement, and it's an interesting project, and it's worth paying attention to, I think.
Yeah, that does sound quite interesting. And the more you were talking about this, saying about the data and like packet network, and then suddenly you said M17, I was wondering whether you could move digital voice through the system, because effectively that's just ones and zeros in packets as well. So, sounds interesting, Bill. Leslie, what's your thoughts on this one?
To be honest, I know very, very little about mesh communication networks at all. So I've been listening to Bill with interest. I think I need to get into this a bit more, because it looks the up and coming thing to look at. The capabilities of it look quite good as well. So very interesting, Bill. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, I think, Leslie, it's a bit like having an internet of routers, which are, instead of connected via cables to, say, the internet, are connected via RF. And your data will get moved around the system till it reaches its final destination. So it's got to be good. It's got to be interesting. And it's something new for our hobby. And
certainly have its uses.
Yeah, and some of the youngsters will probably get quite excited about this. So, good on them. Chris, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, this reminds me a little bit when we went to Friedrichshafen a couple of years ago. Our colleagues on the Austrian Amateur Radio Society, the OVSV, and I can't pronounce it, sorry. It's a very long Austrian pair of words. But they've always been very innovative. When we seen them a few years ago, they had, at one time, they were sort of showing some prototype mobile phones that also had an AM radio built into them. And they were also, more recently, looking at this Hamnet, or being involved with this Hamnet project, where they essentially have I think it's a mesh-based network, different frequencies. I think it's up in the gigahertz. So it's been looking on the internet, 2.3 gigahertz and 5.6 gigahertz. But essentially, it's a private network that links together amateur radio operators on those bands. But it's similar to the internet, so it lets them, share information, do things like messaging and APRS and voice over IP and that sort of thing. But it sort of sounds quite similar. It's a mesh network. Hamnet seems to be covering mainly in Europe, so Austria, Germany, Italy, those sorts of areas. But this sort of sounds a similar thing, someone innovating, trying something out new, and that's what amateur radio is about, isn't it? It's about, experimentation and learning, isn't it? So, all the best to them, really.
Yeah, it is all about experimentation. So, it sounds fun. Martin, another thing for you to play with, or would you bypass this one?
I don't know. I mean, I'm interested in it. It's my initial things are aside from because we can, I wonder if there was a driving force for this. What are they trying to send across this network? They say it's capable of carrying compressed video, audio, and telemetry. Okay, telemetry you could argue is something like APRS. Audio, it's a wide coverage. Voice repeater, compressed video. That's something that people don't often get to play with. I know people here in the South were talking about building some kind of mesh with DR2 repeaters, but they would be linking via like 5 gigahertz with microwave data links. And of course, you can send pictures on them, but they're just like still pictures. But this sounds like there's a lot more to it. It's a very interesting project. I'd like to know more about, Bill was saying about them using like pi hats and things like that. I'd certainly be interested to know more and look at sort of the signs of the area that they're actually trying to cover and what they do to achieve it. I mean, okay, we are lucky where we are relatively flat, but of course, where some parts of the world are not so flat, what do you need to do to get the signals in there? That's what amateurs do, isn't it? It's what we play with. It's what we learn to do. And I guess because we can is probably a good answer as to what's going on.
Yeah. Well, I think it's an interesting one to keep an eye on. I know people have been playing with mesh networks or trying to understand them for a few years now, but it looks as though it's raising its head above the parapet. So maybe we'll see a lot more of it in the near future, which is a good one. Right. Move to our next news story. Great Falls Library adds ham radio instruction books. And in fairness, I know Frank was with us. His club has done a very similar thing there down in Jackson, Mississippi. And it's just nice that we're getting these books into libraries. Leslie, do you want to go first on this one?
Well, I've always said that things like this are a good idea. We tend to have hubs in this country where libraries are sort of providing lots of other social services as well. So you're sitting down and you have a look and you think, and you just want that book or that subject that sort of sparks the imagination. Can you guarantee success? No. And to be honest, it doesn't really matter because the outlay and the effort is actually quite small, but it's just, getting the information about the hobby out there, and somebody may pick up a book and read through it and go, oh, I want to get interested in this. Can I find out more? And you will get people do that, and that's sort of what it's all about. I think it's a good idea, and I hope it works for them.
Oh, yeah. Well, I took some old books up at the club last week when we was talking about, when we all took our exams and the difference in the licensing books, the one I took and the one a few years before and things like that.
Tell me about it.
Oh, yeah. But it's an interesting thing to look at some of these books, and if the libraries have got them in there that people can have a look at them, then that along with more modern stuff. But let's face it, most people
yes
want to look at the more modern stuff. But yeah, on that one, Chris, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think we covered a very similar story recently where we talked about clubs putting books into libraries. But no, I think it's a great way of promoting a hobby. People, hopefully will spot the book. They think, oh, what's that all about? Perhaps have a read through it. And I think last time we talked about perhaps putting a leaflet or something there, or a sticker or something in the book to signpost folks perhaps to their local club. So no, great idea. And, perhaps it's something we should all think about doing to really promote the hobby.
Yeah, I think it's a good one. So, Bill, what's your thoughts?
I don't really have much to add other than I always like reading these stories because, at least where I'm at, one of the hubs in almost every community is the local library. And so having materials available for folks to browse through or check out, very, very, very important. So I'm glad to see this stuff happen.
Yeah. Well, I think I've had some discussions with Frank on this about libraries, and I think that libraries are far more social in your side of the pond and far more visited, put it that way. Although Frank seems to think from some of his survey stuff he's done, the UK is very similar as well. So it'd be nice to see maybe we could do something with books. And, with now the libraries offering ebooks, maybe that's where amateur radio books can get put without them being got rid of fairly quickly if they don't get too many people picking them up. Martin, what's your thoughts?
I say this nicely. In light of things like the internet, how popular are libraries nowadays? Now, pre-internet, it was an absolute first point of call if you want to research anything. But with the internet nowadays, I can't remember the last time I went into a library. For me, I take my daughter to a library because we can get her new storybooks like that. But for research, I'm very lazy. I go to the internet because it's easier to go to your favourite search engine, type in amateur radio, and then just do a research for what you want. But saying that, I see any promotion is good, irrespective of how popular a library may be. I think it would be great if they could tie it in with something like the Saturday mornings that you were doing and Frank was involved with, where you have a station. Hey, you're seeing the station in operation. Did you know you can pop downstairs and get a book out on this? It's down here. You can go and get the book out. maybe that's something that'd be good. I mean, I remember getting a book. Now, this was in the early 90s, pre me having any access to the internet, when the internet didn't really have very much on it. And it was a book about CB, and this was the time when I was getting into CB, and it just whet my appetite even more. So, the fact that books things are there, great. Okay, if you're into, you're looking to get into radio already, you probably already bought the guides, but if you're curious, it's definitely a good starting point. And there's something about having that book there. It's been published. There's not likely to be false information in it. Whereas some people put stuff online that isn't always as accurate as it could be, or they may have misunderstood it. I think they said they were. Did I read in here somewhere they'd also donated a study guide, the ham radio study guide. Maybe I misread that. But if it's a study guide, how often would that need to be updated? But either way, it's fantastic that these books are going there. It's fantastic. There's another resource for people to use. So yeah, why not?
Yeah, it certainly will be. And not part of this, but I noticed that the RSGB have just changed the syllabus again for the exams. And
deep joy.
Yeah, they made an announcement.
The licensing upgrades yet?
Oh, don't. Some of the stuff from Ofcom hasn't happened because they can't get around to doing it. They haven't got enough time. And the syllabus seems to have changed. As a few minor changes that are coming into effect in April. So, that's like 2 changes in the last 6 months, which...
I can see Ofcom must be really busy.
Yeah. Anyway, we better move on because we're in danger of picking a fight that we don't need to have.
No, we don't need to go there.
No. Anyway, next news story. How are you celebrating World Radio Day 2025? Now, I'm not going to let Bill go first because he tells me...
Oh, go on.
All right, then. Go on, Bill. I'll let you go first because you say this is going to throw the hand grenade in the room.
Yeah, how else would you celebrate World Radio Day? CQDX, your 59 QRZ. My gosh, it's so obvious.
He said QRZ, move on, come on.
Yeah, next. Come on, click. 59. What was your call again? Anyway.
Shipping distress. Roger, you're 59. Next.
Yeah, this was an article you shared with us from Radio World, which was interesting. And every year of this is actually a generic World Radio Day that it encompasses all radio, not just Amateur Radio Day, because I think World Amateur Radio Day is in April, around April 18th, maybe. I'm a little fuzzy on that one, guys. But the theme for this year is radio and climate change. So, obviously the first thing I thought of is, okay, guys, dig out your soda bags, get out the solar battery chargers, and do some QRP portable setup at your local POTA park. But aside from that, it's just nice that they have a day, just focusing on some issues and looking at just radio in general. And so this will get us, the whole gambit: broadcast radio, shortwave radio, your, commercial and non-commercial services. So there's a lot of stuff going on. I did pull up the link for, is anything going on with local broadcasters and stuff in your area? And there's nothing in Pennsylvania that I could see. But there was some stuff, some other places around the country. They're having special events or special programming for the day. So, I mean, it's another activity out there, And like I said during the pre-show, CQDX.
Well, I know this came from the World Radio Group, and nicely, I don't always pick stories straight from amateur radio. Sometimes there are some good stories, and they're still radio that happen, and this is one of them. So it's nice that they celebrate World Radio Day. You can celebrate it as an amateur as well, and go from there. So good one, Chris. What's your thoughts?
Well, I'm glad that Bill mentioned the April event because I was a little confused earlier. I thought it was in April. I'm thinking it's in February this year. That's a bit strange. And of course, you're absolutely right. April 18th is World Amateur Radio Day, which is an IARU, International Amateur Radio Union, organised event, and that's been going on for I think a bit longer. But yeah, World Radio Day is a UNESCO event, something they arrange, and each year there is a theme. There's been themes in the past about things like youth and radio and sports, diversity, radio and peace, and this sort of thing. And obviously this year's one, I think, is about climate, etc. So yeah, it's generally about radio. I think in amateur radio we've got our own event in April, and that's perhaps the one that we should get perhaps a bit more involved. I don't know. This is perhaps more about broadcast and other areas of radio. But anything that promotes radio, in my mind, is a good thing.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you on that one. And having done some work for broadcasting in companies as well, it's interesting. And I think sometimes it's interesting to hear the other side of the coin, what other people in radio are doing, not necessarily be blinkered at just pure amateur. Right. Mine, what's your thoughts on this one?
You know what, Bill? When Bill was saying CQDX, I replied to someone calling CQDX a while back, and he told me to go away because I'm not DX, and I don't know what the definition of DX is. But he was quite a long way away in a fairly distant country, and all right, okay, fair enough. But that aside, I read this and I thought this was amateur radio related, and I've Googled it, and it's come into I think it's awareness days. It's come to, and some of the things that they say you can do to celebrate World Radio Day: tune into your favourite radio station or discover a new one. Well, there's only 6 radio stations or so in the UK nowadays. Maybe a few more, but not as many. Exploring the diverse programming that radio offers. Support community radio stations by donating, volunteering. Celebrates radio roles in education. Host a radio-themed event. Here we go. Such as a podcast or discussion to talk about the impact of radio on culture and society. Tick. I think we've done that, Martin. So that's how we could be doing. If we release this on February the 13th, then we've celebrated it. But yeah, there's a whole load of other possible things that people can do. But why not? It's maybe you don't necessarily want to celebrate broadcast radio as such. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But radio is radio, isn't it? It's magnetic waves. Get on the air. Give a call out. Say hello to people. Or get one of those little Wally lights that you put on the top of your aerial and say it's a candle to celebrate Radio Day. But yeah, bit of fun.
Well, Martin, it won't be released on February the 13th because that's the middle of next week, Thursday next week.
Maybe it's a special.
Yeah. I mean, if we don't release on the 9th, which is our normal release day, I think Colin will end up with a barrage of emails saying, where is the
podcast? Maybe we'll just tell people knownload it, but don't listen to it until the 13th.
Yeah, I think that might cause a problem. But equally, I have known people email us, Colin and I, saying, your podcast is late. It's midday. Where is it? No, we're every fortnight and it's next week. Oh, okay. So it does get confusing at times, put it that way. So there you go. Leslie, what's your thoughts?
I've been listening to this. To be perfectly honest, I'm fine on the radio stuff and getting, putting the hobby forward and trying to get publicity for our hobby. I'm all for that. The climate change stuff, I've got to be straight up with this. Maybe it's because I'm a bit of a curmudgeon, and I'll just give that a miss. But that's just me.
No problems at all. You're entitled to your opinions.
Everyone can get involved in whatever they like. I don't have a problem with that, but it's not my cup of tea.
Well, you know that we ain't never going to fall out on this podcast. We have our own opinions, and that's fine. That's fine. So, right, let's move to the last news story. I believe it is. Yep, and in Austria's historic Moosbrunn, shortwave site is dismantled. Now, this site had a 320-ton, yes, you heard right, 320-ton
Wow.
rotating curtain antenna. That is, the picture is unbelievable, and the link to the website I got this from will be show you a link to go and see the picture. But it is a phenomenal. Imagine this massive antenna that you could have rotated. I mean, I think even the big DX stations would have killed for this one. So, what's your thoughts, Chris?
Well, it's a real shame it's got to go. I think they were saying it was there's been some kind of detonation of the aerial and been brought down in a controlled explosion. Real shame. It's been around for just over 40 years. And there's photographs of this aerial. It actually rotates at that. So, I mean, the bearings on something that must hold that amount of weight to turn it around, this big cursed antenna, must be real, should we say, real big engineering. But yeah, real shame. But unfortunately, it has to be decommissioned, so it's gone. Apparently, it's successfully dismantled using a precise targeted explosion. But yeah, that would have been one heck of a big bang. But there you go. Sadly, the petition, which was to save the site for 3,000, which had 3,000 signatures, unfortunately didn't have an effect, I'm afraid. So there you go. End of an era, I'm afraid, in that part of Austria.
Certainly is, and fantastic piece of engineering there. Bill, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to echo the fantastic engineering there. This thing is at least 250 foot tall on each end, and it's supporting an array of curtains in the middle, which, folks that may not be aware, that's basically heavy wire antennas that have horizontal. It looks like this one's six strands horizontal, and then a whole bunch of strands vertical, 50, 100 foot high. It's quite a deal to even take this thing down. And like Chris said, it's on a circular track and it was rotating so they could focus the signal where they wanted to send it to. I wish there was more detail on how they even brought this down safely, because I wouldn't want to be in the area. It's a phenomenal structure, and the reality is, it's sad when this stuff happens, but the cost to keep something like this in the air is probably better that they took it down in a controlled explosion instead of letting it stand up there and decay over time and then fall uncontrollably or unpredictably and cause it big issues. So quite a thing. But this place is south of Vienna, and it has been serviced since 1983. So it was built to last for sure. And they, because they had to blow it up to take it down, but it would have just, decayed over time if they didn't do something about it. So I'm glad they did it safely.
Yeah, safety is important, but it is a bit of a shame there on that one. Leslie, what's your thoughts?
I think it's sad, and the word they use is regrettable, but I think that Bill probably hit their nail on the head when he was talking about the cost of maintaining these things and keeping them safe. And you think, do you want to carry on down that route, which is dead money, or do we clear the site? And obviously they took the latter. So looking at this antenna array, and it's absolutely phenomenal, but alas, it's no more. So over to you, Martin.
Yeah, I think we all got a bit of a lump in our throat with this one coming down, but basically because I think we'd all prefer to have it in our backyard. Hi. Martin, what's your thoughts?
Well, I was sad when the Atlantic 252 mast came down in Ireland, but that was something that I'd listened to. I think Bill said these things have decay over time, but these things are built to last. Look at the woodpecker I think it's in Ukraine. That's still standing. I know they don't use it anymore, and it's it is in decay, but it is still standing. They say it was broadcasting, the station it was broadcasting shut down in 2003, but carried programs for international broadcasters until 2024. So it's obviously still being used. Around 3,000 signatures to save it. I think the owners of the site probably see a signature to save it versus 3,000 people that aren't giving money towards the running costs. It's probably a very different thing. They're probably looking at the money of running it. They're obviously expensive to run, expensive to maintain. And let's face it, I hate to say it, but the amount of people that were listening to its signal versus the people that are out there listening on smart speakers, satellites, any other conventional mode that the stations might broadcast on, FM, whatever, they probably don't justify its ongoing cost. It's similar to AM, long wave, and medium wave stations. I hate to say it, but let's face it, people using smart speakers, broadcasters are essentially transferring their transmission cost to the listener because we're paying for our data plans, we're paying for our internet connections, and we're listening on those methods. It's always sad when broadcasting history goes away, although I do think with sites like this, it would be nice if the site owners could let the amateurs have a go with it before they blow it up. So, for example, it's going to go off air, and we're turning it off the air. We don't use it anymore. You can use it for a month and put a special event station on using it. It's a shortwave antenna, so it would have tuned up probably quite nicely. And it might have been a bit of work to connect to it, but I reckon that would have been one hell of a special event station. And being it was a shortwave station, I could almost guarantee some of the people that worked at those stations were amateurs as well. So I bet they'd have loved to get it on the air. But looks like that didn't happen. But sad times.
Yes, as you say, sad times, but it's the way the world's going. Well, that concludes our news stories tonight. Let's find out what the guys have been up to since the last time we spoke. Bill, you normally have a hard stop, so I'll let you go first. What have you been up to?
Yep, I do have a hard stop tonight, so thank you. January has been fun. The bands have been good, great, and just like someone pulled the plug on them. And that's all based on our solar conditions. But I spent a lot of time this month chasing TX7N, the Expedition. I'm going to butcher the name now. Marquaz Islands. That's a new one for me. I ended up working them on the 17th of January on sideband. 20 meters was open. Then I got them on the 19th on FT8 for a data connection. And then I ended up working them twice on CW. 30 meters first, and then 15 meters a couple days later on the 23rd. So, everyone sets little goals they want to do. I want to try to get 100 CW DX confirmations this year in Logbook of the World so I can send off for a DXCC certificate for CW, because I have a mixed, I have a digital. I have enough for a phone certificate. I just never set in for it. But I think I want to get a CW. I need 70 more. Because normally when I work CW, it was stateside POTUS stations and SOTA stations. So I want to get a little more DX going there and see if I can get my DXCC wrapped up. Also, speaking of DX, I was able to get Norfolk Island VK9DX on CW on the 12th of January. And that was beautiful signals. I have that little note comment here in the logbook. It's tone was perfect. He wasn't going, or he or she wasn't going, 30 words a minute. So I was having a hard, now they're going about 18 to 20. I could copy it. I could pick them up, and I was able to get them. Likewise, I picked up Saudi Arabia on 20. Interestingly enough, I didn't have Saudi Arabia on 20 meters. I had them on 40 and 15. So I picked them up on 20 to get another band there, and I have a whole bunch of SOTA stations. I am getting close to 1,000 chaser points for SOTA. Nowhere even close on the activator side, guys. Don't get excited. But on the chaser side, I looked at my score the other day. I'm like 700 and some. So maybe this year I'll actually get 1,000 points in SOTA for chasing. That'll be fun as well. And I did get I looked at my POTA stats because I was working some POTA stations this month, and I got some certificates to download there as well. So there's a lot of stuff on the bands if you're chasing, SOTA and POTA and DX. The bands have been really nice. So I just want to encourage everybody, get on the air, call CQ, work some DX, and have some fun while the bands are hot.
Well, it does sound like you've been having fun, Bill, which is good news. So, as you say, the bands have been good. I've not managed to get on HF as much as I'd like, but every now and then I look at the DX Heat map and I go, I wished I was connected, and I've been found other things to do. But never mind, that's my problem. Leslie, what have you been up to since the last time we spoke?
Oh, well, apart from recovering from certain injury that laid me out for about 8 weeks, but anyway, that's all clear now. The only other thing is I've been doing a lot of club work because I'm part of my job duties as a treasurer, and there's been an awful lot going on at the moment with bits and pieces. So it's very, very little radio stuff, but an awful lot of club stuff that nobody sees going on in the background. So it's just one of those things, and it happens sometimes. So that's where we are at the moment, Martin.
Yeah. Well, you can't always be operating, but you've been involved with radio and radio amateurs, so that's a good thing. That's a good thing, mate. Martin, what have you been up to since last time we spoke?
Well, the last time we spoke was the weekend, but last time we spoke on the podcast, not as much as other people. I have, as I'm sure you will mention, I've been experimenting with D-Star pictures with you. That was a bit of fun. Put my son to bed and then came downstairs and was fiddling around with D-Star on my phone, and learned that we can do that on our talk group. Although God knows what it sounded like on DMR or on Fusion when it was transcoding. So that would have probably confused some people. I put some antennas back on my car. Can't remember if I mentioned it before, but I was using mag mounts, but I had an incident where some cables got damaged. So I've got some better mounts that actually fit my car. Installed those, so back on 4 meters in the car as well, which is quite nice. And I've been setting up some, not amateur radio, but I've been setting up some wireless program links at work. Little in-ear things that people can pop in their ears, and little body packs so you can walk around and you can hear the program, or a director can talk to you. And they're not that complicated to set up, but we were trying to get the desired coverage that we need. So been setting those up in our event spaces so we can people can talk to the remote callers and hear what's going on without it feeding back all horribly. So that was good. And not as much else because, as I say, I have young children, so a packed calendar of parties and other events. Although my daughter does absolutely love her little PMR walkie-talkies. They're I can't remember what make they are, but they're pink, and she absolutely loves them. Unfortunately, they don't hold the charge for very long. And every time she wants to play with them, I'm like, okay, we've got to go and charge them for a few hours first before you can use them. I try and keep them charged, but she doesn't always turn them off, which I find out at 3 a.m. when some crane driver keys up his microphone or whatever, and you can hear it. But yeah, other than that, not too much else going on the radio front.
Yeah. Well, that sounds good. Now, Martin, I got to tell you,
Yeah,
I got into trouble.
that's nothing new.
No. But Phil Higginbottom, VK6ADF,
Yeah,
our good friend down there in Western Australia.
g'day, mate. Yep.
Yeah. He said he was very disappointed in me.
Right.
Because when you were talking about fitting antennas on your car, he was expecting me to say, I'll come round, drill a hole in the middle of your roof, like you've threatened to do on my car many times.
We offered to do it. We offered to do it, and you stopped us. To be fair, though, Phil, Martin did come round with his drill, and he did drill multiple large holes in the side of my house. So he has already made holes in things. But yeah, I'll be honest, I had antennas on the roof rack, and then I kept having to take them off every time I wanted to put a roof box on. That was just a pain. And so I switched to mag mounts. The mag mounts they weren't as satisfactory, and I just wanted like hatchback mounts, but the space on the car where the hatchback goes was a little bit too small for the mounts that I've got. And then I found Comet make them that are even smaller. So yeah, I got those, and they work, but I don't want to. I don't want to drill a hole in my car because I don't think I'd seen it properly.
There you go. But Phil was disappointed I didn't give you say with me round with the drill. So anyway, that's
Just because he didn't say it on the podcast doesn't mean it didn't happen, Phil.
Yeah. Right. Chris, what have you been up to since the last time we spoke on the podcast?
Not a massive amount. At the Radio Club, we had a talk about Gerard Marcus. Martin, I know you arranged that with David Fry. Great talk about a local radio pioneer. Radio-wise, not a massive amount. I was doing a little bit of HF, and there was an award during January this year to go for, which is the Worldwide Award. And there were quite a few of these stations that had WWA. A lot of them, not all of them, had that in their call signs. So I think I managed to work about 12 of them. But actually, across quite a few different bands, I managed to work a few on bands I've not used before. So 12 metres and 15 metres, and some of those, quite a few on 17, 20 and 40. So that was quite good. Actually, no, I think I had 16 QSOs, but I think it was 12 on different, the same, some of them were the same one band sort of thing. So that was good. Apart from that, not a massive amount, I'm afraid, Martin.
Right, well, that sounds like you've done something. Well, I've got to say, guys, I'm having one of those periods where nothing goes right. I can't do anything right. So back last summer, my MFJ 269 antenna analyzer fell off the patio table onto the patio concrete floor. And I thought I'd repaired it, seemed to be working, but when I looked at it properly, it isn't working properly. So I'm having to do a bit of work on that, and I couldn't see anything majorly wrong with it the other day when I had it all in bits. But I'm going to try. I found a circuit online. It might be the right one. Mine's a very early one, so I might have to talk to MFJ and see if they've got an early circuit. There's no point sending it back to the States. It costs too much. So I've been working on that and not been able to get that to work. I also have two Belfang DM1801s, and both of them have had the OpenGD 77 software. One of them will talk to a hotspot, and because it'll talk to a hotspot, I'm 99.999% sure it'll talk through a repeater. The other one won't communicate with a hotspot. And the only difference I can tell, because I've taken the code plug out of the good one and put it into the one that doesn't work, and I'll get the same thing. The only difference is the firmware, and I've upgraded the firmware again, so it's and it still doesn't work. Just won't talk to a hotspot. And I think it's because when you communicate with DMR, you send a signal and the device sends a signal back to let you know that you've got access. So that's a bit of a pain. So I can't really work out what's wrong with that. It's taken me ages rummaging the internet trying to find the software to do it and the upgrade firmware for my particular radio, and it's not straightforward, obvious. Other things, done a little bit 2 meters and 77s from the car, not a tremendous amount, reasonable amount of DIY jobs around the house. We'll let you guys know that the National Hamfest this year in the UK is taking place on the 5th and 6th of September. That's Friday the 5th and Saturday the 6th. Happens to be the same weekend as SSB Field Day, as Chris will obviously know, because you do the SSB Field Day with the club. I was out a couple of weeks ago with a couple of guys doing 145 Alive. Now, I kind of go along to help the guys and keep out of their way, but I'm just there as a full license holder if need be, and they use the club call sign and away they go. And it worked very, very well, apart from it didn't stop raining the whole time we were there. It was pouring the whole time. So I sat in my car. Chris turned up with your camper van, which was nice to get out of my car and come and sit with you and the lovely Bex for a little while. And but that was interesting 3 hours on the downs in the pouring rain. But the boys did quite a bit. And lastly, once again, I said I can't get things to work. I've got an ICOM 90 IC 9700. You're supposed to be able to send and receive pictures in D-Star. I've had Phil try and send me some from Western Australia via our talk group. That didn't work. I just don't get the whole picture. I get about 2/3 of it if I'm lucky. The Pennine Hams group send pictures out after their net. Get around about 2/3, 3/4 of those. And Martin and I were trying again. I don't know why, but I just don't get enough of the picture. So,
Have you tried using a hotspot? You tried using a different hotspot just in case it's like that one hotspot that's just a bit funky?
I've only got one set up for D-Star at the moment, but I was thinking we may just worth trying it simplex sometime, because you should be able to reach you simplex.
Oh, we can do simplex, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So, as I say, I've been doing a fair amount, but unfortunately not having a lot of success. But then some weeks you go like that, and other weeks, doesn't matter what you touch, it all falls into place. So I'm hoping in a few days' time I'll flip to everything falling in touch for me, and I'll be able to do everything, no problems. So that's what I've been up to. So all that's left for me to do now is to thank the guys for turning up tonight, and we'll move on to the next part of the podcast. I'd like to thank Mr. Chris Howard, M0TCH.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Thanks, guys. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I'd like to thank Mr. Martin Rothwell, M0SGL.
Thank you, it's been fun.
Yeah, and I'd also like to thank Mr. Leslie Butterfields, G0CIB.
Thanks for having me on, Martin. It's been a blast as always.
I'm glad it has, yeah. Mr. Bill Barnes, WC3B, had to leave. He was on a hard stop, so thanks, Bill. And Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH, unfortunately wasn't very well today. So
get well soon.
Yeah, get well soon, Frank. You'll be back with us, I know, in about a month's time. Okay, I'll say 73s, and we'll move on with the next part of the podcast. 73, guys.
73.
Cheerio.
Now it's time to have a look at the news in brief for me, Colin M6BOY. We start off with news here of a special event station, the Lonar Meteor Lake Special Event Station. It's got a special event call sign of AU6 Lima Oscar November. Now, it's a crater lake formed by the impact of a meteor around about 500,000 years ago in the past. It's an astronomical wonder in itself, and data from India is operating and activating from this unique place in the world astronomy from the 20th of February to 24th of February 2025. Now, Dada's call sign is VU2 Delta Sierra India, but I say he should be operating the special event call sign AU6 Lima Oscar November. And it's in the Boldhand district, as I say. So look at that. Now, he's going to be operating 10 metres, 15, 20 and 40 metres. So we've got the bands for you for that one. So we're going to post them on ICQPodcast.com and check out that special event station. Well, you probably notice if you're a long-time member of the ham radio community, or maybe even just a new one, that I say we've got a lot of experienced people in our industry. And Paul, Whiskey 9 Kilo Hotel Oscar, who's the employee of the ham radio outlet in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, has just completed 60 years of service to the amateur radio community as a ham operator, and as I say also obviously in his work in the field. So basically he after had an honourable discharge from the Air Force, US Air Force, he began working at High Gain Electronics in Nebraska, and then began working for Amateur Electronic Supplies in Milwaukee, and then say in 2016 they aligned with ham radio outlets in Milwaukee there. So he's the most senior of the sales associates and continues to work in the Milwaukee store. So congratulations there to Paul for his 60 years of service to the ham radio community. And we finish up here with news that the RSGB has launched a new web page looking to embrace emerging technologies and how they can be used in amateur radio. So this covers everything from artificial intelligence to 3D printing and how this might offer an opportunity to broaden the definition of amateur radio, and also as well at the same time increase the appeal and attract a more diverse audience. So we'll put a link to this page on the ICQ Podcast webpage for you, and you can check out this new page and group there that are being set up by the RSGB to look at ways of, say, embracing this new technology and how we can use it for ham radio. Right, we're going to go to our feature on this episode, which is a simple way to receive a QO-100 by Ed Durant DD5 Lima Papa. As always, hope you enjoy.
And now, what you've all been waiting for, this episode's feature from the ICQ Podcast.
Hi all. Today I'm going to give you a little bit of information about an easy way to receive the QO-100 ham radio geostationary satellite. Many reading the title might be saying, yeah, I know that. Simply use your computer and go to the great BATC web SDR that constantly receives the satellite. And you would be correct. That is by far the simplest and cheapest option. What I want to describe today is how to receive it from your own QTH. QO-100 is the only current amateur radio geostationary satellite. It covers almost a third of the world's surface, from the eastern tip of Brazil in the west over to Thailand in the east, and from the Antarctic to the Arctic Circle. Communication through the satellite uses a transponder with an uplink from the 13 cm 2.3 GHz band and a downlink in the 3 cm 10 GHz band. So, we need to receive one of the two 10 GHz bands from QO-100. Yes, I said two bands. QO-100 has what is known as the narrow band, which is used for beacons, CW, SSB and digital modes, just like an additional HF band, and the wide band that is used for amateur TV and future digital modes that need lots of band space. I'm only interested in the narrow band at the moment. Whichever band we are trying to receive, these are still microwave bands, and that's all plumbing and sub-millimetre precision, isn't it? How can a normal amateur, without those plumbing skills, manage to build this? There are commercial solutions, but they're expensive. Well, there is a lucky fact that the KU-band TV satellites used for the UK and Europe operate just above where the QO-100 transmits, and if you happen to be given an old TV satellite dish with its head, called an LNB, low noise block in satellite terms, but what we in amateur radio would call a receive converter, then you are most of the way there to having your own QO-100 receiver. That LNB takes care of the microwave side for you and converts signals down to under 1 GHz, where they are easier to handle with normal coaxial cable. Using the standard TV LNB, signals from the QO-100 output of 10489 to 10500 MHz are converted down to around 740 MHz. An LNB can have 1, 2 or 4 coax cables going to it. This is for when multiple households share the dish for satellite TV reception. In our case, we only need to use one connection. It doesn't matter which one. The satellite dish and LNB I was given by my neighbour was certainly over 20 years old, and I suspected that the LNB may be faulty, so I bought a new universal LNB with just one output for €3. It was a special offer. I'll talk later why this might not have been the best choice. Once the new LNB arrived, I mounted it on the dish and then mounted both of them onto a short mast on the balcony outside my shack. The one coax cable with F-type connectors on each end then ran back to my shack. One coax cable. How does it get its power to the preamp and receive converter? Well, the DC supply is sent up the coax using what is called a bias T unit to inject the voltage through a simple coil and capacitor arrangement. These bias T units can be bought from the usual online sellers for around €15. You should consider that some satellites use horizontally polarized antennas and other vertical. On several satellites, some channels are horizontal and others vertical to get more stations in the available bandwidth. The same voltage used to power the LNB is also used to switch the antennas in the LNB. When the supply is 12 volts, the vertically polarized antenna is selected, and when 18 volts is supplied, the horizontal one is used. Another feature in LNBs is that they have two oscillators for the converter. One is at 9.75 GHz and the other at 10.6 GHz. This enables one antenna to cover the complete band used by the satellite in two smaller blocks for the satellite TV tuner, which is connected to or built within modern TV sets. As different voltages for signaling on the coax cable have already been used for antenna polarization, the TV system designers changed to using an audio tone to switch between high and low band oscillators in the LNB. No tone means low band, and 22 kHz means the high band oscillator will be used. It's amazing how one cable can be used for so many different actions concurrently. Normally, all of this signaling is taken care of within the satellite TV tuners, but we need to look at what we need to do when using the satellite dish and LNB to receive QO-100. The good news is that we don't use the high band oscillator, so we don't need to generate the 22 kHz signal. The narrow band, the CWSSB digital data area, uses vertical polarization, and so we just need to supply our standard 12 volts. If you want to watch the digital amateur TV that uses the wide band repeater in QO-100, that uses horizontal polarization, and so you will need to feed 18 volts to the coax via the bias T. No matter whether 12 or 18 volts is to be supplied to the coax, it needs to be applied without putting the DC voltage across the input of the receiver. This is where the bias T unit comes into play. It capacitively isolates the RF in and RF out sockets while applying voltage, usually via an inductance, to the output socket. You could build one of these yourself, but since they only cost 12 to 15 euros to buy, why bother? With the bought ones, there is a small challenge. The cable from the LNB on the dish has an F-type connector on it. The bias T unit has two SMA connectors. You could change the F-type connector for an SMA one, or alternatively there are adapters that can be bought. You will also need an adapter or cable to go to your receiver. Please try to get just one converter for each switch of connector type. Don't use multiple to make the connection. We are working here at 740 MHz, and every new connection will lose some received signal. The signal from the LNB at 740 MHz can be received on several SDR receivers. If you don't have one, a cheap option is one of the RTL SDR USB dongles. Used with an existing PC, it can receive all the way up to 1700 MHz. Whichever receiver you use, you will need to have a cable to go to the bias T unit. In the case of the RTL SDR, a simple SMA male to SMA male cable or adapter is needed. The larger challenge, however, is aligning the dish correctly. This has to be pointing at the correct angle into the sky, elevation, and at the correct direction, azimuth. There are websites such as dishpointer.com and even smartphone apps such as SatFinder to help you align the antenna. The simple physical inline signal meters used for TV satellites will not help with QO-100, unfortunately. There is a good reason why a satellite dish installer these days has a device that looks like a spectrum analyzer with him, but such a device costs far too much for our hobby task. Dishpointer.com is where I started, and once you have entered your location and selected the name of the satellite, in our case SHALE-2, which is the satellite, QO-100 is just one of its many payloads. This site not only gives you accurate aiming information, it actually shows you on a satellite overhead picture view where your antenna needs to see. I was lucky in my case. I have a clear line of sight from my shack's balcony. Had I been on the other side of the house, the only option would have been to put the dish on the top of the roof. So, we have our azimuth and elevation angles. but we also receive a skew angle. Remember I said TV satellites use either vertical or horizontal polarization? Well, in this world, or out of it, nothing is perfect, and the route from my location to QO-100 needs a slight twist on the polarization, and this is done simply by twisting the LNB in its mount to the required angle. There are marks on the LNB case. I needed -13 degrees. Your value will be different. You can trust the values from Dish Pointer, which is more than can be said for, in my experience, the smartphone app. In an ideal world, you'll put the phone side to the side of the dish mount and adjust to the correct azimuth. I did this to start with and could hear nothing from QO-100. I tried frequencies of the TV transmitters on board SHAL-2, thinking they would be stronger than the amateur transmitter. I could hear nothing. Later I realised that SHAL-2's TV signals are beamed at specific areas, being North Africa and the Middle East, so I would never hear them here. I was starting to think that something in my system was broken. To reduce as many new items out of the equation, I ran a long cable to a satellite TV tuner and again scanned to find signals. Nothing. OK, the final action. Point the dish at the normal Astra satellite that provides satellite TV across Europe and at least test the new LNB and dish. I set up the dish direction using the smartphone app and nothing. Even the strong signals were not getting through. At this point I noticed that my dish was not pointing the same way as the neighbours, which was certainly pointing at Astra. So I swung the dish by feel to about the same angle and I started to get a signal. I adjusted the elevation angle and I got all of the Astra TV stations. I realised the problem was that the app was giving me a direction that was almost exactly 10 degrees off. Once I knew this, I went back and swung the dish around 10 degrees different to where the app showed for SHAL-2, and bingo, I could hear one of the QO-100 beacons. A little more trimming and I was receiving QO-100, CW, SSB, FT8 and PSK signals on the RTL SDR. It may sound obvious, but pointing the dish in the correct direction is rather important. One question you may be asking is how do I know the frequency of the station as I am tuning the intermediate frequency IF of around 740 MHz, but the signal is actually at 10 GHz? Well, at the start, I told you the LNB has two conversion oscillators in it, and as we are only using the low band, we use the 9.75 GHz one. So, add what the radio shows to 9.75 GHz, and you'll have the frequency you are receiving. All done, right? In principle, yes. However, as accurate frequency is not critical for TV reception, that 9.75 GHz may not be exactly 9.75 GHz. Indeed, it often isn't. So you need to calculate the difference from 9.75 GHz for your calculations and then adjust accordingly. How do you check what the real frequency is against what you see? Well, there are 3 beacons running constantly on QO-100, and they are accurate. You can also find a station on your receiver and then the same station via the BATC web SDR that I mentioned at the start. It's on the web at eshail.baatc.org.uk/NB/ and then see where the radio says it is, adding 9750 MHz to the displayed frequency and checking the difference. Once you know what the actual frequency of the LNB oscillator is, you can put it into a spreadsheet to allow quick calculations. It's also very useful to print out the QO-100 band plan from AMSAT-DL. Remember I said I bought a bargain basement LNB? Well, for €3 I wasn't complaining. However, there is a better option. One whose oscillator is closer to 9.75 GHz and does not drift nearly as much as that cheap LNB. It seems the majority of people receiving QO-100 use an LNB called the Bullseye 10 kHz TCXO LNB. That 10 kHz refers to the maximum drift and not frequency of operation. The big thing is that this far better LMV is available for under €30. The end result is a receive station where I can tune around and listen to stations from the QO-100 satellite coming to me from anywhere from Brazil to Thailand to the Antarctic, and all without having to move the dish because the satellite is geostationary. It's a little project for everybody. It doesn't cost a lot, and you'll be getting into satellites. If you missed anything in this feature, I have sent Colin the script to put up on the ICQPodcast.com website. 73, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay happy in our hobby. This is Ed, DD5LP.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
Well, everybody, I really hope you enjoyed the feature there by Ed Durant, DD5 Lima Papa. And as I say, it's thanks Ed for doing that feature for us on a simple way to receive QO-100. So I say, guys, as always, we'd love your feedback. So do go to the ICQ podcast page there to pop any feedback to us that you may have. While there, say, show your love for us this Valentine's Day by considering sending a donation, either one-off or a subscription-based donation, and join the wonderful listeners who, subscribe to us with those donations that help us pay our way and keep us advert-free. And those donations can be found at icqpodcast.com/donate. Well, it's been a very challenging weekend this weekend doing the podcast. I've been away at a wedding and had some technical problems, so Marty won't be joining me for this part of the show like he normally would be. But as I say, in the meantime, I will be looking after my Mrs. B and as I say, making sure that I make her a cup of tea and find her a treat after our fantastic weekend that we've had this weekend. But more importantly, I really hope that you continue to enjoy the hobby, enjoy the show, and as always, we'll catch up again in a fortnight's time. 73's all.